council taxpayers, because if you don't meet your cash limit on the licence fees that you charge, ultimately it's got to come out of somewhere to meet the cash limit. So it could be, and this is what we say about taxi fares as well, and this is no different, that the council taxpayer. So small businesses may be being protected, but the difference will have to be picked up from somewhere, and that could be the taxpayer.
So I've never seen, line by line, the licensing budget. So I do not know what impact changing the fees is going to have on the overall cash flow or forecast for the licensing budget. We've only essentially got Nikki to tell us what impact it's going to have. So Nikki, how much does it currently cost to process one license application?
I mean, I can do a cost-by-cost basis for you, but I would have to go through. I haven't got that information because obviously it's getting down to disbursements that you'd put in for a solicitor. You know, half an hour on this, 20 minutes. I don't work those figures out to that degree. What we do is we time record all officers across the functions that we do, and on the basis of that time recording and how much time they spend on that is added proportionally to the licensing budget.
So there must be a ballpark idea, because you're asking us to make a decision, and by saying it's going to affect the budgets if you change this, without knowing how much it's going to affect the budgets by. So there must be a ballpark figure.
The figures that I've given you in terms of the licensing budget are that we would be in a deficit, and that is in that report, which has been confirmed by the head of director of finance. So I'm just trying to find out. So in 3.9, because of the impact of the pavement licensing regime against the previous budget for amenities on the highway, we are currently showing last year a deficit of 3.5. So we're already down from last year.
So does that mean, for example, once we've done 100 renewal applications to make up the deficit, we would then drop the fees down because we're not allowed to be making a profit on them?
No. As now, when amenities on the highway will be renewing, they will be renewing under the fee that you are going to agree today. I won't be getting £1,000, £900. So that's why that deficit is going to get bigger.
If, for example, we have so the figures that you've proposed aren't going to bring us out of deficit, based on the number of current applications and the ones that we're expecting to pay 500, the ones we're expecting to pay 350.
We know. Well, yeah, we're on 3.5k we're deficit anyway, so we're not going to reach that at the moment.
Point of clarification, Chair. The financial report that I've got for the fee states that if we charge 500 or 350, based on what you've asked, there'll be a safety net of £4,400 for this year. So can you clarify why we would still be in a deficit when my financial report states it would be 4.4 up?
Because, no, you're right. At the moment, the deficit on the budget, but if you're looking to decrease that figure, we will be in a deficit. I can make the figures work with the figures that have been recommended in the report. I can't, if they're anything less, I can't balance the budget for you.
Okay. So, based on the figures that you're proposing, there would be a safety net of 4.4 thousand. So we have got a bit of wiggle room.
This is for this year?
For 24-25, yeah. I know that reduces to 1,000 in 25-26. I kind of agree with Stuart that I don't like the fact we don't have finances here to know that that's a really dangerous territory to not know where we're at, and I don't want to adjourn the meeting. I just think that what we are talking about here is thousands rather than tens of thousands. I've just done a rough calculation, and even at worst case scenario, we're looking well under 10 grand as a deficit. And that's worst case scenario. We're looking at well under 10 grand, but we might not be looking at a deficit on best case scenario. I am comfortable, Chair, of having a £4,000 or £5,000 deficit, and when I have to explain myself, I say, well, I've just kept 60 businesses in operation. And I think the argument that council taxpayers will have to pay, which I do understand, don't get me wrong, but say that there is a, let's use an easy figure, £5,000 deficit. That means each council taxpayer pays 3p a year. I don't like to keep businesses operating, to keep staff employed, to keep local high streets active, to keep the business rates being paid. Which, guess what, we get a cut of revenue. I'm okay with that. I can sleep well at night with that. And I think there's other ways that we can. I mean, we're obviously here. We're a group of meant to be non-partisan people in licensing, but we are members of parties, and there is a budget coming up in March, and I'm sure we love the licensing so much that if there is a £5,000 deficit, we can go to, well, we can, can't we? We go to our groups and say, let's make sure there's a £10,000 thing for pavement licenses. I mean, we do crazy things in budgets. You know, we spend £1 billion a year. Hugh's laughing. He's done loads of crazy budgets. We spend £1 billion a year or whatever in this council. I would have no qualms approaching the administration and saying, look, can we have £10,000 to support our small businesses for pavement licensing, please? And I think the administration would be more than happy to provide that. Administration here, but what I mean is you know, we are talking about thousands here and not tens of thousands, and I think that, you know, I understand that council taxpayers will have to pay it, and if a council taxpayer comes to me and says, why do you demand that I pay to keep these things, I'll say, you paid 3p for last year and you've kept loads of people in jobs and businesses. I'm okay with that. What I'm saying is there's methods out of things. I just don't think, without the figures that Stuart's brought up, without in-depth figures, I'm not happy to penalise small businesses yet. We can review it every year, which is what's said. So say next year we say, you know, Nikki comes to us and says, right, we lost £4,000 last year. We can obviously look at increasing it in line with inflation or in line with the deficit to make sure it's fair. And also, you've got to remember that would allow the businesses to prepare and get prepared for that, because currently we're going to increase them anyway. Even for the smaller ones, they'll still be going up. And then the following year, it gives them a bit of a stopgap. So yeah, anyway, sorry.
I do agree with Councillor Medricks on that. Can I ask a question of, by allowing £100 for the government set up, so we actually encourage small business to buy their furniture, their outlet, to set up the businesses. Now we're all of a sudden penalising them with such a high increase in one go, and I think that's something that we need to look at, because we initially said, the government said, okay, you're allowed to, that we're going to charge you £100. Now you're saying you are having a law in place to govern this. I think it's kind of showing a carrot and, you know, doing the opposite. So as a small business individual myself, I think we do need to look at it, and like Councillor Medrick said, we do need not to sort of, maybe we need to look at it after the budget, so before something is set in stone that this is the law, because we are actually going to damage a lot of small businesses. So I think we do need to look at it, because it's our fault that we charged £100 and now we are saying £350, and that's, you know, that's, to me, it's really unfair. Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, with all the talks of that there, I'm assuming this budget estimate there is on the business scene remaining static, like that's the businesses we've got at the moment, no more, no less. Because if we did end up penalising the smaller businesses, they could end up not being a business, which means we'd actually go further in deficit. Whereas if we're encouraging more small business to open, we could generate some money that way, and of course that would be the preferred way. I'm sure we'd all agree to encourage growth to make up the debt, rather than, you know, put a fee on it which could keep things static but not encourage growth.
Members, I am merely providing you with the facts. It's my duty to tell you about your budget, and if you make that decision...
Sorry, that wasn't directed at you personally. I'm not accusing you of being anti-business, but it's just a general thought.
Nikki loves sitting outside at a wine bar having a drink. Put that in the minutes. She supports all the local businesses.
I love licensing. I just hate fees and charges. But, you know, I can only give you the advice you need to make a decision.
Chair, can I request that we go to the vote? Because I think we're real flushing it over. If we can go to the vote on the in the motion I proposed, then we can take the call on everything. I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, George, in principle, I absolutely support what you're proposing. The only reservation I have is if you've got two businesses, one of which has a massive indoor area, massive rateable value, and one of which is quite a small indoor area with a small rateable value, but both have equal outside space. That creates another disparity. Would it not be better to do the sliding scale based on the amount of outside pavement space they have available rather than their rateable value?
No. Would you like me to tell you why I think that? Because predominantly the people with the higher business rates have the larger size businesses internally, thus the higher revenue. The smaller businesses that are under, say, 15,000, it's very unlikely they'll have more than 30 chairs in the building. I mean, I would be classed as in the middle tier, and I have 42 chairs in my. I don't know what Councillor Kadir has, but for example, like. And Wetherspoons, they can have. I keep saying Wetherspoons, but large businesses like Wetherspoons. I'm referring to that because they're the biggest on-site trading people we know. They've got massive buildings and 8 seats outside, but let's face it, they can afford the extra £150 a month. So I think that the bigger businesses with the bigger rateable values have a larger turnover, so they could subsume and accept a cost of an extra £150 more than, say, a small business with a larger footfall. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
that actually makes perfect sense.
Okay,
Thank
cool.
you.
Can I just note that next time we talk about any budget increases, we have someone from finance here. Is that all right? So that if any of these questions can be answered. Is that all right?
I'll speak to, probably something to ask Chris Ward, because obviously I don't. And that's why the reports have the Director of Finance's comments embedded in them. Certainly for annual fees and charges. Yeah.
I think, Chair, what we should do is if there's something, because this one's quite pressing, isn't it? We've got to get it through before the council. So what I think would be a better idea, Chair, is if there's a report coming for this committee where we have to make a decision that can't be deferred, because we can't defer this decision today because it has to go to the next full council next week. So I think what we need to make sure is that if we have a future situation where a decision cannot be deferred because we don't have the time, that we request, we can't demand, we request financial, legal, etc. to come here, because we're essentially being asked to make a decision here without the officers that may be able to answer those questions, and we have no ability to defer. So I think what we've got to do is we've got to kind of fall on our sword on this one and do what we believe in our hearts for our residents and our small businesses, but take this as a learning curve that in future, if any report comes through that has to be decided on the day, that we at least request officers.
You put it a bit more better than me, but yeah. Right, we'll go to Councillor Madrick's motion. This is my first time, guys, so it's been seconded by Kadir. All those in favour?
Are you abstaining, Chair? I think, Chair, just to confirm, and just correct me if I'm wrong, we now need to vote on the entire report with the amended B section.
Thanks. Right, well, we'll vote on the rest of the report now then. All those in favour? Cool, that passed.
Can you imagine if Councillor Strudwick was Lord Mayor? Cool. Sound. That passed.
Thank you very much. And you'll hear it all again next week. Well, you won't hear it, you'll just get the recommendations, won't you, coming from here, the report, when we will amend, we'll have to amend that, won't we, in line?
Yeah,